Atlanta, 1960. A cross was burned in Martin Luther King Jr.'s yard, and his young son watched as he pulled it down. Civil rights leaders were always under the threat of white supremacist terrorism. Selma, Alabama, March 7, 1965. John Lewis was brutally assaulted by state troopers, and his on-air beatings helped ignite the historic Voting Rights Act. Budapest, 1956. A crowd of protesters waving flags bearing cut-out communist symbols outside Parliament gave an immediate image of revolution against Soviet occupation. Prague, August 21, 1968. A photographer photographed in a surrealist manner the invasion of Soviet tanks into Prague and miraculously smuggled photographs out of invaded Czechoslovakia to record this terrible loss of freedom. Eastern Front, 1942. German soldiers who became prisoners of the Soviets were kept in the hole. Millions of them would never go home due to the terrible war. Lockerbie, Scotland, 1988. The bombing involving Pan Am Flight 103 filled the town hall with corpses, and security in airports and global justice would never be the same. California, July 1976. 26 kidnapped children and a bus driver escaped their underground prison by piling cushions up to break through the roof. Panmunjom, North Korea, 1953. The Indian neutral forces assisted in transporting Chinese prisoners to the exchange points, and thousands were sent back to their countries after the armistice in the Korean War. Argentina to Israel, 1960 to 1961. The secret kidnapping of Adolf Eichmann in Argentina resulted in his trial in Jerusalem, where he was held accountable for Holocaust crimes. Finland, 1940. Sniper Simo Heiha shot more than 500 enemies in 3 months without a scope on his sniper rifle, and only after killing countless people did he receive a crippling blow to the face. July 11, 1943, Sicily. Liberty ship Robert Rowan burned off Gala in Operation Husky, with ammunition stores spewing columns of smoke into the air over landing beaches. April 1968. 2 widows were present at funerals to grieve the slain civil rights leader, and their presence was full of sorrow in struggling communities seeking equality and justice. Johannesburg, 1977. Rosalind Fox Solomon captured a white family as they sat on the ground with the black maid lying down, revealing the racial order of apartheid. Fallout Shelter, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, 1965. The mathematical calculation of cold survival was made by designers of a fallout shelter, 4 square feet per person of hanging chairs stacked in the pantry in desperation. Niagara Falls, 1969. The waterfall was diverted temporarily by engineers to observe the erosion process, revealing bare cliffs and millions of coins thrown by tourists over the decades. England, 1962. Test pilot George Aird survived a plane crash when his malfunctioning aircraft ejected him laterally, and he fell down and landed in a nursery greenhouse with broken legs, but got out of the malfunctioning plane. Jersey City, 1975. The Twin Towers flew over dead railway stations and vacant factories and demonstrated how the waterfront developed into a financial center. Chelsea, 1953. A polio-weakened child was isolated to eat alone at the coronation party of Queen Elizabeth to protect the rest of the children who had been very susceptible to the disease. London Zoo, 1930. Zookeepers showed the contents of the stomach of a dead ostrich. The contents included gloves, rope, coins, all killed by a dropped 4-inch nail by a visitor. Zanzibar, 1947. Young Farrokh Bulsara took a picture with his mother several decades before becoming the greatest legend of rock, Freddie Mercury. United States, 1840. Hannah Stilley, born in 1746, the earliest born person to be photographed, stood in a daguerreotype. Glacier National Park, 1913. The members of the Blackfoot Nation stood in traditional attire in front of their wilderness home, preserving their cultural identity as the surrounding ancestral lands were transformed. Native Americans, 1907 to 1913. Roland W. Reed photographed Native Americans who were maintaining their culture in the face of disastrous American expansion and compelled assimilation efforts. Oklahoma, 1894. A young Kiowa girl was dressed in traditional clothes at the period when Native Americans had to endure systematic eradication of their culture by governmental policies. Saigon, 1975. Hysterical citizens scrambled onto walls to get to the last helicopters. The notorious rooftop was a CIA apartment, not the embassy. Warsaw Ghetto, 1941. A door with warning signs of typhus had desperate eyes peeking through, as sickness, too, was another weapon of terror. Beijing, 1989. A nameless man protested by standing in the path of a column of tanks outside Tiananmen Square, and his action became a global symbol of resistance. West Berlin, 1961. Fathers used to put babies in windows so their grandparents on the east side could see them, a sad sight of families split up by the abrupt creation of the Berlin Wall. Peleliu, September 1944. One Marine lay in rubble on his deathbed in the most terrible battle of the Pacific, where heat and constant shells pushed men to the brink of death. Chicago, August 4, 1948. A pathetic picture of children for sale in the yard with a yard sign. Desperate poverty had led the Chalafu family to sell 4 children, with Rayanne recollecting it years later as bingo money. Great Depression, 1930s. The soiled face of a small girl told the tale of extreme economic depression that was bringing down American families. Her haunted eyes were witness to decades of child poverty. Great Depression. Job line. Desperate jobless workers lined up to get any job opportunities when the economy went down, and this was comparable to the same situation that happened in the 2009 recession. Austrian boy, World War II. The delight of a child who newly got new shoes in times of scarcity and rationing during the war. This tiny gift was a miracle, taking into account that during that period, most European children did not have such basic things as a pair of shoes. Soviet Russia, 1930. Stalin's agricultural campaign turned churches into grain storage, and religious icons glared down upon sacks of confiscated products. Germany, July 21, 1921. In 1919, Hitler joined the Nazi Party and was starting his way to genocide and war by making speeches where he accused the Jews and Marxists of Germany's problems. New York City, 1937. The German-American Bund, with an American flag next to the swastika banners, paraded when furious mobs assaulted them. London, October 4, 1936. The residents of East End erected barricades that prevented the fascist march of Mosley, which led to the Public Order Act, which made the wearing of political uniforms illegal. Berlin Olympics, 1936. Jesse Owens recorded a world record 200-meter time at Hitler's propaganda event. The American athlete won 4 gold medals and embarrassed the dictator who was present. Hextable, England, 1938. A woman experimented with a gas-resistant baby carriage that was developed against chemical attacks. The experiment was carried out just before the outbreak of World War II on the impending danger of aerial attacks. Stratosphere, 1939. Bulky oxygen masks were used by passengers on test flights at 20,000 feet until the development of pressurized cabins eliminated the need for clumsy breathing equipment. Tehran, Iran, 1971. Female university students hung about on campus, reading, wearing Western outfits. These pictures capture ordinary life before the 1979 revolution changed freedoms radically. Little Rock, Arkansas, 1957. Black students were guarded by federal paratroopers in Central High after the governor prevented integration and Eisenhower intervened. Seattle, 1918. A streetcar conductor denied people not wearing masks during the Spanish flu pandemic, which is similar to current COVID-19 preventive health actions. Germany, 1945. Irma Grace, a 22-year-old woman, was executed for heinous war crimes that even made other British Army officers who were used to the crimes of war shudder. Los Angeles, December, 1964. The death of soul icon Sam Cooke in a motel in December 1964 is a controversial one, as his final moments have been discussed to date. Late 1960s Europe, Otto Skorzeny, rescuer of Mussolini, was in a threatening pose. An Israeli intelligence report claimed to have approached him at the time. Florida, 1960. Paul Pavlik was caught just prior to making one of the strangest threats in history against President-elect Kennedy. Leavenworth Prison, 1904. Solomon Civils came in with an 18-month sentence, seriously underweight, tubercular, and addicted to morphine due to selling liquor illegally. November 9, 1989. Checkpoint Charlie. East Berliners marched into West Berlin. The crowd cheered and touched cars, and the opening of the border was witnessed after a disorienting press announcement. Berlin, 1989. West German children used to address East German guards through a hole in the wall. Such tiny experiences were signs of the end of the Iron Curtain. North Atlantic, 1912. Macy co-owner Isidor Straus and his wife Ida decided to perish together on the Titanic. She would not use the lifeboat to stay with him. Mount St. Helens, 1980. Richard Lasher took a photo of the volcano eruption he barely escaped. The Pinto and Yamaha in the photo disappeared with the massive volcanic eruption. Texas, 1935. A great dust storm was close and all that was in the way of it. This ecological disaster was an outcome of drought and ineffective agricultural activities that destroyed the Great Plains. Soviet Union, 1988. In the disorganized years of Perestroika's collapse, millions of viewers were intrigued by televised mass hypnosis programs of Anatoly Kashpirovsky. France, September 18, 1918. A British chaplain was kneeling to pray over a mortally wounded German medic, which made the enemy a person as the Hindenburg Line was breached. Belgium, 1917. An Allied soldier bandaged a Red Cross rescue dog at the trenches. These gallant dogs located injured soldiers and rescued thousands of them. Vietnam, 1969. A U.S. soldier demonstrated his combat helmet, which was hit by what would have been a fatal blow, a stark reminder of how close death is. Mogadishu, Somalia, 1993. An example of a kind-hearted act by an Italian soldier. He was feeding a local orphan in the chaos of civil war during the violence and starvation of the UN mission. China, 1938. Cheng Benhua, a 24-year-old resistance fighter, smiled at her Japanese executioners. Her fearless expression became a symbol of Chinese women's bravery in wartime. Slovenia, 1941. Albina Mali-Hocevar enlisted in resistance when she was 16. She was shot twice in battle and spent the rest of the war as a nurse. Iwo Jima, 1945. In his foxhole, a Marine was reading letters sent from home and smiling much-needed emotional support in the course of the month-long gruesome battle. Bronx, New York, 1977. Economic disinvestment was manifested by extreme urban decay where buildings were burned, and rubble was the central feature of landscapes ravaged by arson and poverty. Charlie Chaplin, 1977. This is one of the last photos of the silent film star before his demise. Chaplin witnessed the dramatic developments in cinematography and civilization during his entire long life. California, 1964. Randy Gardner was a 17-year-old who stayed awake for 11 days, had hallucinations, and lost his memory before bouncing back to his usual state. Miami, June 1937. Amelia Earhart was joking at the wing of her plane several weeks before she disappeared into the Pacific, the greatest mystery in the history of aviation. Tennessee, 1953. The Prisonaires had written the song "Just Walking in the Rain" that they recorded on Sun Records during their prison imprisonment, which sold 250,000 copies on Elvis's future label. Sweden, 1951. He was a 66-year-old Gustaf Håkansson who rode over a day ahead of the official competitors and became known as Steel Grandpa after being disqualified because of his age. United States, 1959. Navy test subject. Marion Myers was in a wall of ice evaluating the Mark IV cold weather suit as an early spacesuit. Britain, 1940s. Tattoo master George Burchett exhibited his art on the Great Omai, whose stripes covering his entire body earned him fame. Burchett was also the tattoo artist of King Frederick IX. German soldier returns, 1956. The father who had been imprisoned by the USSR after the war reunited with his son, who was a one-year-old baby and who spent his early childhood without a father. Pacific Ocean, 1970. The Apollo 13 crew was waving on their rescue ship after they landed heroically in the Pacific after their oxygen tank exploded. Boston Marathon, 1951. 9 years after the atomic bombing, Shigeki Tanaka, a survivor of the Hiroshima bomb, won the race in front of dazed crowds. New York, 1885. The massive neoclassical Statue of Liberty was finally received with its completed 350 parts brought in by France. Laborers constructed the colossal sculpture, and it became the most significant icon of America. Hermann Goering Collection, 1945. U.S. military examined the works of art stolen by the Nazi leader in World War II. The massive body of stolen masterpieces was an example of industrial-scale cultural theft. Philadelphia, 1902. Child workers protested against poor working conditions, and exploitation and reforms were made to enact child labor laws and mandatory education in the entire nation. 1974, Washington, D.C. Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein were watching Nixon on television resign. Their Watergate coverage taught them that no one was above accountability.